everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. So you sent us this awesome podcast episode all about cost reduction techniques for businesses, and we are so ready to break it down with Ya.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for this one.
I think everyone's thinking about saving money these days, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just for like big corporations anymore. It's like, how can we all be a little bit smarter with our money?
Yeah.
So we're going to dig into this episode and pull out the best tips and tricks.
For sure.
And hopefully give you guys some ideas, whether you're running a business or just trying to, be a little bit more financially savvy.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things that really stood out to me in this episode was this idea that profit isn't just about the money coming in.
Right.
It's about controlling the money going out.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. And I think a lot of people, they get so focused on revenue, which is obviously important. But, you really got to look at that bottom line and see where you can cut costs, because every dollar you save, it's a dollar earned.
Yeah, it's true.
Especially in this economy right now.
Yeah, for real.
Like, we're dealing with inflation, supply chain issues.
Mm-hmm.
All these things are making it harder and harder to, just maintain profitability.
Yeah.
So you gotta be really smart about where you're spending your money.
Right. And I feel like it's so easy to fall into those traps of like, oh, well, it's just a small expense here and a small expense there, but it all adds up.
Oh, absolutely right.
Right? So it's about being really mindful.
Yeah.
So the podcast actually outlined like 7 different techniques for reducing costs, and we're going to kind of go through each one.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first up is automating operations.
Love it.
Now, I know when some people hear automation, they think like big fancy software.
Right.
Lots of money.
Yeah, tons of money.
But it doesn't have to be that complicated,
Yeah,
right?
Not at all.
Like, what are some simpler ways that businesses or even individuals can start automating things?
So, automation can be as simple as setting up email filters so that like customer inquiries are automatically routed to the right person.
Right?
You can use scheduling tools so you're not wasting time going back and forth trying to find a meeting time.
Yeah.
Even just using like a simple task management app can help you stay organized and on top of things.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be, some big expensive software system.
Yeah, and it frees up so much time and mental energy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, which then you can dedicate to things that actually, move the needle forward.
Exactly, and that's where the real growth happens.
Right, so instead of chasing invoices, you're, brainstorming your next big idea.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay, so next up on the list was negotiating with suppliers.
Yes, the art of negotiation.
This one I feel like can be a little bit intimidating for people.
It can be. I think a lot of people are afraid to, rock the boat or seem like they're being difficult.
Yeah, or they just like feel uncomfortable asking for a better price.
Right. Yeah.
But the podcast made a really good point about leverage.
Yes.
So can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so if you've got a good relationship with a supplier and you've been a loyal customer, you've earned the right to ask for better terms.
Right.
Ask for a volume discount if you're buying in bulk.
Yep.
See if they can give you any perks or incentives. Don't be afraid to shop around and compare prices too.
Right.
Loyalty is great, but it shouldn't come at the expense of your bottom line.
Word.
You got to make sure you're getting the best possible deal.
I think it's so easy to just get complacent.
It is.
Like, oh, I've been working with this supplier for years. I don't want to rock the boat. But then you realize you could be saving so much money.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now this next one, I'll admit, I always kind of roll my eyes at because it just sounds so like logistical and boring.
Yeah.
But the podcast expert really sold me on the importance of supply chain optimization. Yes.
And this is basically about like mapping out every step of where your products or materials come from.
Right.
Where they go, how they get there.
Yeah. It's all about visibility.
Sounds kind of tedious, right?
It can be, but it's so worth it because what you're really doing is you're looking for those hidden bottlenecks. Those inefficiencies that are costing you money.
So give me an example, like what's a common bottleneck that people might not even realize is happening?
Okay, so let's say you're always sourcing materials overseas because it's the cheapest option up front.
Right.
But then you have these long shipping times, potential delays, customs issues.
Yep.
All these things can add up and end up costing you more in the long run.
Right.
So maybe sourcing from a local supplier, even if it's slightly more expensive, could actually save you money in the long run because you're reducing those transportation costs and those potential delays.
Mind blown.
Right.
I'm like already starting to see the world through cost reduction goggles.
That's what we like to hear. Okay, so another one that I think is super relevant, especially these days, is reducing energy costs.
Yes.
And it's easy to think, oh, I'll just swap out a few light bulbs and call it a day.
Right. The little things.
Right, but there's actually so much more to it than that.
There is.
Like, what are some of the less obvious areas where businesses and individuals can save on energy costs?
Well, you got to look at your HVAC system.
HVAC?
Yeah. Make sure it's running efficiently.
Okay.
Look at your insulation. Make sure you're not losing heat or cool air.
Mm-hmm.
You can even negotiate better rates with your energy provider.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't even know you could do that.
you can.
Interesting.
A lot of people don't realize that there's often some wiggle room there.
Okay, so it's like about being proactive and actually reaching out and seeing what's available.
Absolutely.
Cool. And I love that this also ties into like sustainability.
It does.
You know, so you're not only saving money, you're also being more eco-friendly.
Right. Win-win.
Okay, so next on the list is outsourcing non-core activities.
Outsourcing.
This one I feel like is a classic cost-cutting move.
It is.
But the podcast had some really interesting caveats about it. Like, it's not just about like blindly outsourcing everything, right? You got to be strategic.
Absolutely.
So how do you decide what to outsource and what to keep in-house?
So you want to focus on what you're really good at, what makes your business unique.
Right.
Don't outsource the things that are core to your brand identity.
Got it.
Because you risk diluting what makes you you.
Yeah, and I imagine customer service is a big one there.
Oh, huge.
You know, because nobody wants to deal with like a robotic, outsourced customer service experience.
Absolutely. You want that personal touch.
You know, you want someone who actually understands your needs and can help you solve your problem.
Right. And can understand sarcasm.
Exactly.
That's important.
All right, so speaking of things that can be frustrating,
Oh, boy.
let's talk about going paperless.
Let's do it.
No, come on, it's 2025.
I know.
We should all be paperless by now.
It's about time.
But seriously, like, I get it saves trees, saves space.
Yes.
But is it really that much cheaper?
Oh, it is.
Really?
Think about it. You're not just saving on paper and ink. You're saving on storage space.
Right.
You're saving on shipping costs.
Mm-hmm.
You're reducing the risk of losing important documents.
True.
And digital documents are just so much easier to manage, search, and share.
That's true.
So it really does add up.
Okay, so it's like about the long game.
Yeah.
It's not just about the immediate costs of paper and ink. It's about all the downstream benefits.
Exactly.
Okay. And I love this challenge. What could you digitize in your personal life?
Yeah.
Like, what are some things that we're all still clinging to paper for that we could probably get rid of?
Receipts.
Receipts, yeah.
Take pictures of them.
Mm-hmm.
Store them digitally.
That's a good one.
Bills, pay them online. Get rid of all that paper clutter.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know, even like notes and to-do lists. There are so many great digital tools out there. So why are we still using sticky notes?
I know, I'm definitely guilty of that.
We all are.
All right, so the final cost-cutting technique they talked about was monitoring and cutting waste.
Ah, the waste monster.
It seems obvious.
It does.
But I bet there are so many sneaky sources of waste
Oh, yeah.
that we're just like blind to in our daily lives.
Absolutely. We get so used to doing things a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
we don't even realize that we're being wasteful.
So how do we start identifying those areas of waste?
Regular audits are key.
Okay.
You know, whether it's your business expenses or your personal budget,
Mm-hmm.
you need to sit down and really look at where your money is going.
Right.
And, you know, I'll admit, even I fall victim to this sometimes.
Sure.
Like, I recently found a subscription I was paying for, but I hadn't used in months.
Been there.
Yeah, it happens to the best of us.
Okay, so we've talked about these 7 techniques, but I
Okay.
want to get into like real world examples.
Yes.
How is this stuff actually playing out?
Okay, so there's a great example in the podcast about a manufacturing company that was dealing with a ton of raw material waste.
Oh, no.
Like 20% of their materials were just ending up in the trash
Wow.
because of these outdated, inefficient processes.
So what did they do? Did they like switch to cheaper materials or something?
Well, that's the interesting part. They actually decided to invest in better equipment.
Okay.
And they also invested in training their employees to use that equipment properly.
Interesting.
So it was a significant upfront cost,
Right.
but it paid off big time because they were able to slash their waste by 50%.
Wow.
So they ended up saving thousands of dollars each month.
That's amazing. So sometimes spending money is actually the best way to save money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about investing in the right things.
It's like buying a good pair of shoes.
Yes.
You know, they might cost more up front, but they'll last longer and you won't have to keep replacing them.
Exactly. It's about long-term thinking.
I like that. Okay, so before we get too excited about all this cost cutting, the podcast also talked about some potential pitfalls to watch out for.
Yes. Important to be aware of those.
Like, don't be penny wise and pound foolish, right?
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things we should be careful about when trying to reduce costs?
Well, one of the biggest pitfalls is compromising on quality.
Right.
It might seem tempting to switch to cheaper materials or cut corners on production to save a few bucks.
Yeah.
But that can really backfire because if your product quality suffers, you risk damaging your brand reputation and losing customers.
Right.
And in the long run, that's going to cost you way more than you saved.
Yeah. Short-term savings, long-term pain.
Exactly.
What about employee burnout?
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one.
You know, it's tempting to think, well, I'll just make my existing employees work harder.
Right, just
Yeah.
squeeze a little bit more out of them.
Yeah. But that's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
And it can actually lead to lower productivity, more errors,
Absolutely.
and then ultimately higher costs because you have to replace employees who are burned out.
Exactly. And it's so expensive to hire and train new employees.
Right. So it's like you said before, it's about long-term thinking.
Yes. Always think long term.
Okay, so what about marketing?
Marketing.
That seems like an easy target for cuts when you're trying to save money.
It does.
Yeah.
But the podcast makes a really good point about this.
Okay.
It's not about cutting marketing altogether.
Right.
It's about cutting the ineffective parts of your marketing.
Got it.
So you need to have a targeted strategy, and you need to track your return on investment.
ROI.
Yes,
Make sure that your marketing efforts are actually bringing in more money than they're costing you.
exactly. If it's not working, cut it.
Don't be afraid to experiment and try new things.
Exactly.
But always be tracking and measuring.
Always be measuring.
So it seems like we've got a lot to keep track of here. Like,
Yeah.
how do we actually put all of this into practice?
Well, the podcast suggests starting with a thorough audit of your expenses.
Okay.
Whether it's your business accounts or your personal budget,
Mm-hmm.
you need to know where your money is going before you can figure out where to cut back.
It's like decluttering your finances.
Exactly. Get rid of all the unnecessary subscriptions, memberships, those recurring expenses that you've totally forgotten about.
Been there?
We all have.
Okay, so once we've identified those areas where we can potentially save,
Yeah.
what's next?
Well, the next step is to set a clear and achievable goal.
Okay.
So you want to aim for a specific percentage reduction in costs
Mm-hmm.
over a set period of time.
Got it.
And this is where it's really important to involve your team.
Oh, interesting.
Your employees are often the ones who are closest to the action.
Right.
They might have some really valuable insights into where inefficiencies exist and where savings can be made.
It's like crowdsourcing cost-cutting ideas.
Exactly. And it also helps to foster a sense of ownership and collaboration.
I love that.
So get everyone involved.
All right, so we've talked about the techniques, the pitfalls, the importance of setting goals involving your team.
Yep.
But is this just like a one-time thing?
No, this is an ongoing process.
Okay.
Cost reduction is not a one-time fix.
Got it.
It's something that you need to integrate into your regular operations.
So it's about building those habits.
Yes, build those habits.
Constantly looking for ways to improve, being adaptable to changes in the market.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's circle back to those pitfalls for a second.
Yeah.
We talked about compromising on quality employee burnout,
Right.
cutting marketing ineffectively.
Yep.
Are there any other examples of how short-term savings can actually cost you more in the long run?
Well, let's say you decide to switch to a cheaper supplier to save money on materials,
Okay.
but then their delivery times are unreliable
Oh, no.
or the quality is inconsistent.
Right.
That can lead to production delays, unhappy customers, damage to your reputation.
It's a domino effect.
It is.
So how do we avoid those pitfalls?
It all comes down to critical thinking.
Okay.
We need to go beyond the surface level
Yeah.
and really analyze the potential consequences of our decisions.
Got it.
Now, this might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but sometimes the best way to save money is to spend money.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, it sounds kind of paradoxical, right?
Yeah.
But strategic investments can actually save you a lot of money in the long run.
Okay.
Remember that manufacturing company we talked about?
Yeah, the one with the waste.
Exactly. They spent money up front on better equipment and training, but they ended up saving way more over time.
Right. But that's like a big company
Sure.
with like capital to invest.
Yeah.
How does that apply to like regular people?
Well, think of it as investing in yourself,
Okay.
like taking a course to learn a new skill that could lead to a higher paying job,
Right.
or investing in a quality appliance that might be more expensive up front, but will save you money on repairs and energy costs in the long run.
So it's like shifting your mindset from just cutting costs to thinking about how your spending can actually generate more value in the long run.
Exactly. It's about being strategic with your money.
I like that. Okay, so the podcast also talked about this really fascinating link between cost reduction and innovation.
Oh, yeah.
And that's not something I would have expected.
I know. It's kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah, because you think like cutting costs means like cutting back on everything.
Right. You're being restrictive.
Yeah, but they were saying that it can actually lead to more creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're forced to do more with less, you have to get creative.
Yeah.
You have to find new and better ways to do things.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Exactly. And the podcast actually gave a really good example of this.
Okay.
There was this small business owner who was struggling with rising rent costs.
Oh, yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah. And instead of giving up, she decided to downsize her physical store
Okay.
and focus more on online sales.
So like turning a challenge into an opportunity.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing it worked out pretty well.
It did. She saved a ton of money on rent, and she was able to reach a wider audience online.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great example of how cost-cutting, when done right, can actually lead to growth and innovation.
It's like it forced her to think outside the box
Exactly.
and come up with a new solution.
Yep,
I love that. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today.
we have.
From like practical cost-cutting tips to like bigger picture ideas about investing strategically.
Yes.
And I think the main takeaway for me is that maximizing profits isn't just about making more money.
Right.
It's about being really smart about how you manage your money.
It's about making conscious decisions, being mindful of your spending, and making sure that every dollar you spend is aligned with your goals.
Whether it's automating a task or negotiating a better deal or just being more aware of your daily expenses,
Yeah,
every little bit counts.
it does.
And it all adds up to a more financially secure and fulfilling life.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to cost reduction.
Right.
What works for one person or business might not work for another.
Right. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly. It's a journey of learning, experimenting, and adapting.
So to wrap things up, I want to leave you guys with one final thought.
Okay.
And this is something that the podcast touched on that I thought was super interesting.
I'm intrigued.
In a world that's obsessed with like more,
Yeah.
always getting more, always buying more.
More is better.
Right. Maybe the key to like true success and happiness
Yeah.
is actually about mastering the art of less.
Ooh, I like that. Less is more.
Less waste, less impulsivity, less unnecessary spending.
Yeah.
Maybe by embracing less, we can actually have more of the things that really matter.
Like time, freedom, and fulfillment.
Exactly. All right. So on that note,
Yes.
we're going to wrap up this deep dive.
Sad to see it go.
I know, but we'll be back with more soon.
Always.
Thanks for joining.